SiriusXM keeps truck drivers informed and entertained with coast-to-coast coverage across the U.S. and Canada. Listen to what you love from anywhere on the road with 24/7 ad-free music plus sports, news, talk, and comedy. Hear your favorites on every haul for just $6.06 a month. Sign up at SiriusXMFleet.com. Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is the show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of Long Haul. And today I am excited. I'm always excited, but today I'm even more excited because I get to have a conversation with a longtime friend of mine that in freight that's been doing just an amazing thing. When you think about fraud, fraud is the freight industry's dirty little secret. And today's guest is one of the only people that is doing something about it. Dale Prax is a Marine Corps veteran, former broker, and founder of FreightValidate, a platform built to stop scammers before they ever get their hands on a load. From fake carriers, from ghost dispatches to double brokering rings, Dale has seen it all and built tools to stop it cold. This episode is going to wake a lot of folks up, especially the ones that think that'll never happen to me. If you care about keeping your authority clean and your business protected, stay locked in. This is the episode for you. Welcome to the show, Dale. Excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. It's really great to be here, and I really appreciate the invite. And I think it's so important, as you mentioned, to be aware of what's going around in your surroundings and be aware what the scams are and how to fix them.
Yeah, man. You've worn every hat, too, from broker, carrier, tech founder, and you've seen the underbelly of the industry. What moment, and if you think about a single moment, or it could be an experience that just pushed you to the edge to launch FreightValidate and made fraud prevention your mission, what was that?
I think I was at a trade show convention back in 2022, late 2022, down in Tampa. And I saw all these people on the stage and on panels talking about freight fraud and talking about the problems of freight fraud and how to fix it using subjective data. And I just thought that there's more to it than fixing the problem. We got to find out what the problem is, how we got to that problem, and eliminate the problem that causes the problem in the first place. And so that's when I decided that, we've got to stop, penalizing drivers, for instance, that maybe didn't have enough inspections. So we say, oh, they're a bad guy. Those are subjective things that people look at to see if a person's a bad guy. But it really, Adam, this, it goes way deeper than how many inspections they've had. It's like, are they in violation with state and federal law? Let's start there. Let's make that our baseline.
But the thing is that people became so comfortable with just using, they don't have enough inspections. That's kind of like a fraud baseline. And hey, if they have had enough inspections, they're good, because they may not really understand the business like that, though, wouldn't you say?
Right, absolutely, right. And, not everybody that doesn't have inspections is a bad guy, and not everybody that has a lot of inspections is a good guy.
That's true.
That's all subjective data. So subjective, and we're learning this even more and more, that subjective data can be manipulated to make a bad guy look good, a good guy look bad. Objective data is fact. If you go with fact, that's all it is. And the analogy I like to use, if my wife and I go to see a movie and she thinks it's a great movie and I think it's not so great of a movie, we could change each other's minds. If I say that movie won an Oscar, that's a fact. There's no changing that.
No, that's true. And I think that when it comes down to freight and when it comes down to freight fraud prevention, there's that subjective and there's that objectivity. But you have to have a little bit of both, and you got to have common sense mixed in that with that as well, because it all makes sense. How did your background in the Marine Corps shape how you approach fraud investigation in freight today?
Well, I think there's a couple ways. I spent about 20 years in the Marine Corps. I was on active duty for about 16 years, and then the other 4 years or 5 years or so I spent in the Marine Corps Reserve. And it's almost like that this is a war that we're fighting. So there was a book written by Sun Tzu back a long time ago called The Art of War. And to win any war, you have to understand your enemy. And I think that's what some of us are missing in this industry, is understanding the enemy. Like, we don't want to give them our playbook, our strategy, those kind of things. We want to know what it is and try and take the enemy out and come from him in different fronts. And we have to be really more offensive than we are defensive. Today, we're playing the defense a lot in this war. The other thing that I think helped shape me to where I am today is that while I was in the Marine Corps, my last 6 years, I worked for this just incredible gentleman. His name was General Livingston. He's a Medal of Honor winner, and I worked on his Inspector General IG team. And my job was to go out and find reasons that people are, find ways to make people ready to go to combat and find the deficiencies within their unit and straighten that out to make the mission complete. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. Let's find out what the problems are, what causes those problems, and find ways to defeat the enemy and collaborate with each other to do that.
And you're doing an amazing thing at it too. And I want to get really deep into freight fraud and what's really happening out there. So when when you look at it, and let's not even sugarcoat it. I want you to just be as real as you can be. How bad is freight fraud right now, and why does it seem like it's getting worse instead of getting better?
Well, I think freight fraud is horrific. I think that even if there's one case of somebody getting ripped off, an owner operator, small motor carrier getting ripped off for $2,500, that is huge to me. So it's really, really big. Now, I think that freight fraud maybe in the last 2 or 3 years hasn't grown significantly, but what has grown has been the awareness of the amount of freight fraud that's happening. You talk about guys like Highway, Carrier Sure, Carrier 411, us over here at FreightValidate. We're all bringing more awareness to it. So the industry, I think, has a little misconception that fraud has gotten so much bigger. But I think fraud has been big, but we're really bringing more light to it because we have people out there that are really trying to fight it and saying, wow, this is bigger than we thought it was.
You talk a lot about identity verification instead of risk prediction. Can you break that down for our listeners? What's the difference and why does it matter?
Yeah, I think that goes back to your earlier comment about, subjective data, objective data, and the combination of both with common sense. And so if we look at this and I'm big again on analogies, you know that.
Yeah.
When we go to the airport, the first thing they ask for is, are you who you say you are, and should you be here? The same with, I think, when you come into our industry or you're going to pick up a load. Are you who you say you are, and should you be here? So if we know that for 100% certainty who they are by checking with facial recognition verification and their credentials to make sure that that's the correct carrier being there, that's the start. That gets them through the gate. Then we go to risk management or risk assessments or subjective data. That's checking the bag to make sure there's not 3 ounces or more of liquid. There's not a gun, all those kind of things. So that's the next step. I think that's where some more subjective things come in. Then the common sense is, should he be on the plane? And that's where, we get into tracking and macro point and truck stop, all those things that do tracking or trucker tools. So now we have, should the guy be in the gate in the first place? Has he had his bag checked? Now when he gets on the plane, is that plane going to divert anywhere? Those are really the 3 steps of fighting the whole fraud thing, I think, if you have those things in line. And facial recognition, you can have 1,500 MC numbers, but you only have one face. So we need to check the verification of the face of the owner, the dispatcher, and the driver, so the shipper knows who's coming in there. What I've been pushing for 2.5 years, and I was going to retire before I started doing this stuff. I wanted to get out of the brokerage. I wanted to go and play with my grandkids and stay at the beach. But I knew there was a problem. And I've been saying this for 2 years. I would much rather have the FMCSA merge up with the Transportation Safety Administration and require a transportation workers identification credential for anybody that works in transportation. Let's start with the people that own the company.
Yeah.
If a driver has to have one to go to an airport or port, there's 600,000 drivers that have to go through that process every single year. Fingerprints, facial recognition verification, in-person interview, all those kind of things. Imagine if the owner of that company that puts him on the road had to go through that. We'd have a hell of a lot less fraud because there wouldn't be someone coming over from overseas pretending they're a U.S. citizen to go to Chicago to put their fingerprints down, right? So I think that if we went to that way and let FMCSA handle safety, get involved with the TSA under Homeland Security, because this is a Homeland Security issue, whether anyone wants to believe that or not. Have them, since they're the ones that issue TWIC cards in the first place, let's have them take it a step further. And just to break that down a little bit, if 600,000 drivers have to go through that every year, approximately 45,000 companies apply for their operating authority, brokers and carriers every year. That's a 10% increase in the workload for the Transportation Security Administration. That's not a huge workload increase, but boy, could you really benefit from that if they did that right. another part that's, I think, important to that is it costs about $125 for a 5-year TWIC card. So if we could charge, and it costs the government $65 to do it, to do the background check and everything. So if we took that profit, we raised the rate from getting your authority from $300 to $425. That pays for your TWIC card, and maybe you'll put in another $65 per person into some enforcement or something to help us stop some of the scams if they get through.
We would hope, but obviously the spending and actually the oversight of where those fundings are being allocated and how it's being enforced are one of the issues that we commonly see when it come across a lot of the regulations that fit out within this industry. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things when it comes, across the board to us and folks such as yourself. Why is it so easy for bad actors to get the FMCSA credentials and get access to freight in the first place? Like, where are the gaps?
That's a $64,000 question, really.
Yeah.
And I did a study on this thing when I had a panel with the FMCSA not long ago. In the state of Tennessee, it takes approximately 1,100 hours, and it takes 3 years of school. You have to make sure you pay your school off, and you have to go through an apprenticeship and all these kind of things to become a barber in the state of Tennessee. To become a motor carrier in the United States or a broker, you need $300 on could be a stolen gift card from Visa, from Walmart. $300, to get in. A BOC3 registration, where you go to many people pay $99 or less to get that, and somebody that's going to issue some insurance, whether it's surety bond or insurance, or
commercial,
auto insurance.
All right.
So, do we care more about bad haircuts or safety on our highways? The laws are all there. MAP 21's been around for years. Deregulation in 1980, ratified in 1995, been around for years. There are so many regulations out there that protect us from all of this, but no one's enforcing them. That's where the real issue comes in.
It's the enforcement. It's long been enforcement.
Yeah. So here's what I think is really unfair, being a broker for so long and owning a trucking company, been an owner-operator. If the FMCSA determines someone is fit to operate, then they should be fit to use. Brokers are not detectives, or they're not background investigators. They are brokers. Motor carriers, they're not investigators or detectives. That should be up to the FMCSA to determine they're fit to operate. That means they're fit to use. And if the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration would just follow their own rules, like making sure that a broker goes through the proper training or has education to get his authority. That's been in law since Obama signed it in 2012 or something like that. But we still don't have that requirement. A principal place of business, you can't work out of a post office box. We've helped the FMCSA fix that. So on new applicants, we haven't seen one go through in almost 9 months, but there's still 5,000 out there that are. Affiliations with other FMCSA regulated entities. That's not illegal, but denying the affiliation or not disclosing it, that's illegal. We need to crack down on that. What makes that really difficult is that there's nowhere that I can look or you can look without going to the FOIA office, the Freedom of Information office, to see their applications, see if they marked that they were affiliated. I had a conversation with FMCSA, and it said, I told them, during your new modernization that's coming up, why don't you make it so on Safer, I can see if this guy's affiliated with anybody else? And if he is, what are those MC numbers he's affiliated with, or those DOT numbers? So when he gives me a loan and it's somebody, I can maybe do a little bit more due diligence. I'm not saying that brokers and carriers shouldn't do due diligence. Anybody in business does due diligence. But I don't think that we should be digging so deep into those things that the FMCSA should have looked at in the first place.
You mentioned something, I think that should be even retroactive. And that's another thing, when FMCSA puts something out in front of us, that's a kind of a forward-thinking, regulation or forward-thinking change. So when you think about these virtual addresses, you think about all of these PO boxes, okay, cool. Yeah. In the last 9 months, we haven't seen any go in. But when can the FMCSA go back and say, okay, well, let's look what we got in the database right now, and we need to red flag these folks that already have these virtual addresses, so that way we can go do some deeper diving into them and maybe give them a cutoff time where this thing's got to get changed, or you know what, we're going to shut this authority down.
Absolutely. I wrote to the FMCSA, and it was covered in Overdrive magazine back in April 2023, where I took a list of 2,500 letters that I wrote that I was protesting the authority of these guys coming on. And I even gave them that same, so that's what caused them to change, their tactics so that when somebody new comes in, they don't issue them authority if they're in a post office box, et cetera. But I told them how important it is that there were over 5,000 companies that are in that position right now. The perfect example that has kind of been the laughing stock now of the industry is there's an address at 3377 California Avenue in Signal Hill, California.
Mm-hmm.
That building is about 1,200 square feet. There's 3 signs out front that say no truck parking. There's maybe enough room to park a couple of Yugos there. Yet 376 active DOT numbers use that as a principal place of business. Now, are they shady? Is there something wrong with them? We don't know that, but we know they're in violation of,
The rule.
49 CFR 390.5T. We know they're, but here's the worst part about that is 250 of those companies have the same email address, WTF FMCSA at AOL.com. So to me, there's a problem there. So why don't we send a show cause order to every one of those at that address to that email address, and maybe send a DOT person in person to see who's here. Now you have 30 days to correct that deficiency. If you don't, you're done.
And the thing about that is that you hear a lot of time the FMCSA, they'll say, well, they don't have the resources, they don't have the staffing. Well, why don't they go and partner with third-party companies that can go in and do these independent verifications? It's not saying that they have to go in, these third-party companies, and go in and enforce anything, but they can report the news. They can go out to that address in California and say, hey, yeah, we sat with these carriers and we didn't find this, we didn't find that. This is what our findings are, and you guys make the decision on what goes forward.
I've offered to do that for them for free, and my offer's been declined.
Why?
Because they don't have. I don't know. That's a problem that I don't really understand. Is why don't you allow us to help you help yourselves? If you say you're not staffed, let the citizens that pay you by our taxes every year to work, let us help you. We have the resources to do it.
There are so many providers, and I don't think that there's ever been a time, and I've been in this industry since 2000, and I can't think of it ever being a time where there's been so much collaboration. And there's dissension, don't get me wrong, but there's so many people that are just tired. They're tired, and it's like, look, we'll work together on helping you guys fix this problem, but we got to do something about it. So when I think about double brokering, ghost carriers, load hijacking, it's not just a broker problem. It's a small carrier problem too. How are small carriers getting caught up in it and sometimes getting blamed for it?
Yeah, that's a real issue. And one of the reasons I started FreightValidate is because we've had for years, well, since 2000, about when Carrier 411, I think they were the first to emerge. They've been around 20 years.
Yeah.
25 years. But there are more people checking brokers than we ever checking carriers than we ever check brokers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got this thumb down on these motor carriers who don't have a chance to have access to companies like, that do vetting of brokers because they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And who wants to sell something to somebody that can't afford it, right? Mm-hmm. So they've out there been in the black trying to say, okay, I'm going to go to Safer and check to see if this broker's bad or good. That's all they've got. And Safer's information is only good as the guy that put the information in, because it's obviously not being checked.
That's right.
So what is a small motor carrier with 1 or 2 trucks, or a guy by himself? He's like a bank lending money to a broker, but they're just giving them an MC number, and he's like gambling, hoping that they pay him.
Yeah.
That ain't right. That's not been right for years, and no one's really tackled that issue. But instead, they're getting beat up by saying, oh, you don't have enough inspections. You haven't been around for more than a year. We're not going to use you. And so the bad guy hears, okay, we have to be around for a year. I'm just going to go buy somebody's MC number.
And hold on to
our business tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, but the bad guy's the good guy. And here's the analogy I like to use a lot. When Yellow went out of business, there could be a guy there working for 30 years, got 3 million miles under his belt. He says, I'm done working for the man. I want to go and start my own trucking company. We're going to make this guy wait a year to move his first load. So let's say it's 90 days. So the bad guy goes and buys an authority. He's working tonight for really cheap. The good guy sitting home trying to hope he gets a load somewhere. Who thinks that bad guy is going to turn good on the 91st day?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have to use facial recognition.
And I'm a big fan of that. I think that the barrier entry has always been too low. You know, when I think about you starting a trucking company, when you think about the liability behind it, and one of the things that I'll be honest with you, Dale, I'm so fed up with is I'm fed up with fraud, but I'm more so fed up with seeing folks die on these highways as a result of circumventing these systems, as a result of chasing where they probably shouldn't be on the road in the first place. And you go on X, and I'm very active on X, and I know you're very active on LinkedIn, and the stories are just horrific. And I'm frustrated because I'm just tired, man. I I've been in the industry for a long time, man. And I don't remember it being such tragedy that we're starting to see as a combination of both accidents, fraud. It's like the wild, wild west today, man.
Right. Well, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We just all witnessed an accident that happened in Terrell, Texas last Saturday.
Yeah.
I think it was Saturday before last. 5 innocent people died at the hands of what started with fraud.
Yeah.
The company that was involved in that was working out of a virtual office in Washington. We had it
Mhm.
flagged. We knew they were working out of a virtual office. The minute that they found out about that through LinkedIn, XL, and news everywhere, they changed their address to an apartment address in Florida. This company is affiliated with other motor carriers. That affiliation is not disclosed to FMCSA. Those are 2 points that if they were vetted properly at the very beginning, perhaps something would have been different today,
That's right.
right? And so it all leads. And I think I saw on WFAA TV not long ago that they said that 70 to 80% of the accidents that happen that are fatalities are caused by some sort of fraud at the beginning. Whether it's a violation of a law, a violation of a state law, you wouldn't believe the number of companies who are with the Secretary of State's office at the state where they're listed as a principal place of business are not even registered in that state. Or their name has changed a little bit from logistic to logistics, and it
Mhm.
doesn't match FMCSA's data. There are so many things that we find every single day that if they just did their vetting, and here's something that's kind of important that I just stumble on this, and maybe it's changed. I don't really know, but it really stuck with me since 2013. In August of 2013, August 23rd, 2013, the Federal Register put out a notice. This is around when they're going to first do the first iteration of modernizing the Uniform Carrier Registration
Mhm.
System.
Mhm.
$390 million to pay for that over a period of 10 years. In that Federal Register, it said the FMCSA has the authority to vet all motor carriers, in the United States as part of this modernization. But a lot of people don't look at footnotes inside Federal Registers. Being a legal officer in the Marine Corps, I learned to read footnotes, right? Footnote 68 of that register says, while the FMCSA has the authority to vet all motor carriers, it is currently only vetting for hire and household goods carriers. I don't know that that's ever changed since then. And now, even if we look at HR 88, I think it's 805 that's going in right now through Congress. That bill is even called the Household Goods Fraud Bill or something.
Mhm.
And even though it's going to probably cover the rest of the industry, I think that we need to make that clear so some administrative law judge
That's right.
doesn't say down the road, hey, this really doesn't count,
That's right.
right? And to give you an idea what 1%, what household goods and passenger carriers are for hire, that's 1.5% of all motor carriers.
Yeah, it's a very
That's
small
like
portion.
saying, and here's again analogies, right? You're going to the airport and they say 1.5%. Okay, that's the middle row of first class. You guys have to be screened. The rest of you, go ahead. And that's where we're at. That's why we're at where we're at.
So, just to shift gears just a little bit, when I think about protecting your operation as a small carrier, for those that are listening to this one, if I'm a 1 truck or 5 truck fleet, how do I protect myself from fraudulent load offers or getting entangled with bad brokers or fake dispatchers?
Well, and this is not a shameless plug on FreightValidate, but it's a shameless plug on FreightValidate.
Sure, man,
We're the
sure.
first to say, let's take care of these owner operators to give them a chance. I mean, I can't go into a bank and say, hey, I need a loan for $3,500 and here's my MC number. I'm a good guy. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
So why are
Mhm.
we letting a broker get by with that, or a shipper even? So we decided that we want to help the owner operators of small carriers. So with FreightValidate, you can check a carrier's credit score, number of days pay, whether they're in compliance with state and federal laws, whether they're using a shared office, virtual office, if they're affiliated with somebody else, you can get that from your cell phone. And we do it, we have packages that like for $1.99, you can check,
Yeah.
or $4.99, whatever it is, you can check. We also because I have the owner operators in mind, because my dad was one, my brother was one, I was one for a short time, I want to make it easy for them. That we built an app for their phone that they can just say, hey, Siri, check FreightValidate. She'll ask for a MC number, and in 4 seconds, they'll say yes or no, and it'll say if it's a broker or carrier trying to give you that load. You wouldn't believe the amount of owner operators who don't know that they're getting a load from a carrier and a double brokered load. And again, that goes back to the FMCSA and the Department of Transportation. If you most owner operators and most small carriers get their information from Company Snapshot. I think it's very common on the carrier side.
Yeah.
Brokers use L&I, licensing and insurance, to get their information. Those two systems are 30 years old and don't talk to each other. So there are currently, and this just will boggle people's mind, FMCSA want to change from not issuing MC numbers to only issuing DOT numbers, right? I think that we were even reporting that was going to happen as early as October of this year. And when I spoke to the FMCSA, I said, let's think about this. If you look at MCMIS, the Motor Carrier Management Information System, if a company doesn't have authority, or they had authority, broker and carrier joint authority, they may have had their broker authority dismissed or revoked or inactive 10 years ago. But if you look at SAFER, it still shows entity, broker / carrier. The systems aren't talking to each other. So when I spoke to FMCSA, I brought this up to them and I said, if you were to stop MC numbers today and just issue DOT numbers, there are 126,000 companies who have no MC authority for their, they have no MC authority, revoked, inactive, but those same carriers have an active DOT number. So if we wipe those all out, that means we're going to put 166,000 or 126,000 people back into the rolls. We aren't going to know the difference. And so the pushback I got was, well, they could be intrastate carriers, so they only have a DOT number. Okay, let's just play with that for a little bit. There are 330,000 or so motor carriers, active for-hire motor carriers. Are you saying 166,000 of those are, intrastate carriers? I doubt it. Even worse than that, 66,000 of those that have no active brokerage authority but active DOT number, 66,000 are brokers. You and I have been around this business for a long time. Have you ever met an intrastate broker?
It's just wild, man. It's wild about the system. So when you think about, some of the red flags that should immediately make a small carrier pause and verify before they even accept a load, what would they be?
What type of authority they have? Are they a broker or the carrier? What's their credit score look like? Are they paying their bills? Shippers need to know that too. They need to check brokers to see, is this guy going to pay his carrier? Because if he doesn't, I'm going to be on the hook for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. I think that we have to look to see if they're affiliated with anybody else. Most importantly, we have to know who they are and where they are. I think that, and we offer this to carriers too. If you're unsure about a broker that you're going to pick up for, and you're not sure if he's in Pakistan or Pittsburgh, we'll help you out. We'll do a facial recognition verification. We'll tell you, here's what he looks like, here's where he's stationed or where he's at, and his license is valid, right? We'll look that up for you. So I think that identity and location are two really important things. The facial recognition piece also goes to, and again, if we had a TWIC card, FreightValidate wouldn't have to be doing this for the industry. But when I had my brokerage, if you were a carrier, your owner had to go through facial recognition verification. I had to know where he was, who he was, 100% certainty. Then the dispatcher that we got the load, that we want to take a load from us, he or she went through facial recognition verification. So I knew where he was, 100% certainty. He wasn't a dispatch service from somewhere else that's illegal. And we know who he is. Third, the driver has to go through facial recognition verification, so I know where he is. So he's not saying, I could be there an hour to pick up, and he's 5 hours away. That happens all the time. The other thing is, I know with 100% certainty who he is. His driver's license is valid. It matches. It's gone through the whole screening process. It wasn't a fake. He's got an active CDL. If it's domiciled, I'll know that, and I'll know he needs to have a green card or visa, so we can check those kind of things up. But even more importantly, I can send a picture to the shipper and say, this is what the guy looks like that's going to come pick up your freight. Although checking the DOT number is one thing, a lot of shippers won't get off their butt to go do it, especially 30 below zero. But the guy handing you the paperwork, you can look at that.
So you created a Platinum Verified program. How is that different from just having an MC number and insurance, and why should a carrier care about being verified?
Yeah. So I'll go back to a little bit about what FreightValidate does. We really take the information from the FMCSA. We don't validate or invalidate anyone. We look at the data We look at the choices the carrier, the broker, the forwarder made, and we report that. We don't. People validate themselves by the actions they take. Now, platinum validation takes it a little step further. I think that's the work that the FMCSA should be doing, is platinum validating everybody. And it's very similar to anybody that's applied for service disabled veteran small business ownership. There's a lot of things to go through to do that. I've done it. I'm a service disabled veteran. You have to go through, send in a copy of your articles of incorporation. You have to send in all these things to prove exactly who you are. I think it's a great program. But I don't think it should be just limited to guys like me who are service disabled veterans. I think that if you want to get your authority, you have to, we talked about earlier, the benchmark. Let's go through and prove who you are. Do you own this company? Who's affiliated with you? All those kind of things you have to go through. So that's what we've turned to be a platinum verified or validated entity with FMCSA, with FreightValidate. You have to do all those things. You have to show me your articles of incorporation. You have to show me your operating authority. If you're running leases, I need to see a copy of your lease to make sure it matches the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration regulations. So we're not doing these, fake lease kind of things that people just say, oh, he's an owner operator, or he's a sister carrier, that sort of thing. So there's a whole facial recognition verification. You have to go through that. You have to go through all these things that I think FMCSA should make you go through. And it's really, really detailed, but I think it is kind of a badge of honor. Like you are who you say you are with 100% certainty. If you've been in business for a month and you passed all this, you should be getting loads from a good broker, or a good broker should be looking at you saying, this is the guy I want to do business with.
And let's talk about FreightClub. What makes this community different than other networks or things like that out there?
Yeah, FreightClub. The reason I developed FreightClub is because there are too many people. I think we talk about the art of war and knowing your enemy.
Yeah,
there are too many people that are putting things on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn saying, hey, this MC number is bad because they did that. Once we start putting that out there, the bad guy says, they're on to me. It's time to buy an MC number. And they go, or they turn on one that they've had in hiding for a while. So I want to develop a platform that's not a loose social media platform. It's similar to X and LinkedIn and the others, but it's, to be a member, you have to go through facial recognition verification. You have to go through FreightValidate to make sure you're a validated company. And then you can have a membership in the company. Now you can start sharing some data between each other. Do your posts, message each other, list the MC number that you have. But we don't want people just writing, hey, this guy's a bad guy. You show me the document you got the proof. You show me the bill of lading that they changed. You show me the text where he said, go ahead and drive another 15 hours. That's information we can share in an enclosed network that's not just spewing data out to the bad guys to see it. Now, will there be somebody within that network that maybe spits it out to a bad guy?
Sure.
Perhaps, but we're not turning on the water hose of social media and just shoving all this information out.
And when you got the facial recognition out to verified dispatchers, drivers, and carriers, that's a big step, and it was necessary. Do you think that we're headed towards a future where true ID verification becomes a requirement? I know recently the whole Real ID thing, it took them 20 years, I think, to get that to go into enforcement, which I don't think personally, which I know we don't have 20 years in the transportation industry in order to see some significant sweeping changes that would help bring resolution, because people are dying on our roads, where people are losing money in fraud. Like you said, these accidents, if you look back at these MCs that are causing these accidents, there's something within it down the line that's usually that they weren't supposed to do that got them to that point, and they may not have should be on the road anyway. So when I think about that, you got folks that are that think that, hey, that could be another Big Brother system, which I disagree with. Are we headed down the path of true ID verification where it becomes a requirement in order to register your motor carrier authority?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, especially when we talk about Big Brother. The same person that says, I don't want to go through facial recognition verification for this $150,000 load of copper will do it tonight to get to check out his rental car at Hertz.
That's
right.
True.
So
that's true.
And that's a requirement at Hertz and Avis if you want to do it online. If you're walking through Walmart looking at anything in any aisle, your face is on their camera. So I think that we have to really embrace it, and we're doing it to protect each other. Anybody can see your face when you pull up to the shipper anyway. He can snap a picture of you if you want to, but let's embrace this as like, this is something we should do, and we should really look forward to doing it. I think that for your own protection. If you're an owner operator, you would want that shipper to know that if the guy doesn't look like you, don't give it to another guy who's pretending he's you.
That's right.
Right? I think you got to tie it all together. And I just want to go back to one thing while I'm thinking about when you talk about collaboration. I think that collaboration is so important. I've said before, I've said it a million times, we as guys are fighting fraud, we've got to stop fighting each other and start fighting the problem. We have to collaborate to do that. And when I talk about my carrier portal, Descartes, RMIS, all these guys, Highway, Carrier Phone One, Carrier Sure, I think that they're all important people. And do we rib each other? Is there some little dissension kind of? But again, I'm an analogy guy. I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. And if I'm in a bar with an Army guy, we're going to give each other a little bit of guff, right? If a Navy guy, we're going to say, hey, you guys are just ship guys. But when we come time to fight the war, there's nobody who's going to bust through us, right? And that's the kind of analogy that I think is important for us in industry. There are some great things that Highway does. There's some great things that Descartes does. There's some great things that Genlogs does. If we put all this together, we're going to beat the crap out of an enemy.
You said that, and you said this before, that the private sector is doing what the federal systems won't. And I thought that was a very, 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 very spot on point. What was your baseline? What did you mean to convey from that perspective?
Well, again, it goes back to, I think that if the FMCSA says you're fit to operate, you should be fit to use. Why should a broker be called into an accident saying, oh, you didn't check this guy's safety record very well. You didn't check this guy's, anything very well. Well, neither did the federal government, obviously. Right. And so when are they going to become the co-defendant on a nuclear verdict?
I think that ultimately, and I hate to say it, but I think that'll be always apples to oranges. It's almost like the rule maker and the person that governs the rule is always going to have independency in that. And I hate that because it could all stop right there. It can stop.
Yeah.
Dale, I'd be a fool to say that 99% of this fraud would stop at the beginning during a registration process. Because you think about the IRP process and how much red tape that you have to go through at the state level to get an IRP. If you make each stage of that process and you design this process in order to make sure that you're checking every box that's regulatory. And I've been and I'll be honest with you, and I've said this for a lot of times. I believe the new entrant safety audit is a slap on the wrist. I don't believe that it's executed well at all. I believe that initial audit should not come within the first 12 months. It should come within the first 12 minutes. You submit that application, and guess what? Okay, well, we'll sign an auditor to your file. And once that auditor deems that you have all of these things in place, all of these checks and balances are there, everything that's in place, all of your drug testing consortiums, you have everything that you're supposed to have in place there. We're able to do a VIN verification, the whole nine. Then we'll say, okay, yeah, now you can go get your tags. But right now, It's the exact opposite. You give me, Dale, I'll give you $300, $39, and I'll tell you, there's a BOC3 out there that do it for $39. I'll give you $300, $39 to get a BOC3. You can get your liability insurance on a SUV if you wanted to, and have a motor carrier authority within 30 days.
Yeah,
that's a problem. That's a problem.
I wrote some framework for the FMCSA about a year and a half ago, how I think that the onboarding process should happen, because there's no reason in the world that 97% of the motor carriers on the highway are not rated for safety. That's almost criminal. So here's how the framework should work. I talked about the TWIC card process. Having a TWIC card, I think, should be the prerequisite for getting your authority. So while that's happening, when you're going down to that TWIC office, that Transportation Safety Office, Security Office, and you're putting down your fingerprints, the other thing you're doing, if you're an owner-operator, we're going to have someone there, you're going to have your truck with you. We're going to go through your paperwork. We're going to go through all these kind of things all in one day. Your TWIC, your registration, your safety record, all those kind of things. If you're a broker, you're going to show me proof of your authority, of your education or training and experience, and we're going to take a test. If you don't pass all that stuff, you don't go to the next stage.
That's right.
That's it. A lawyer doesn't get to practice bar when he gets out of school. He has, doesn't get to practice law. He has to pass a bar.
Yeah.
A driver, though, can just apply and get on the road and be as unsafe as possible for a year until we find out this, oh, by the way, he's unsafe. Well, how do you know that? Because he killed 6 people, right? Let's know he's unsafe before you give him his authority.
And the crazy thing about that is, just to your point, Like you get an MC authority, you can operate for an entire year, never have any of that stuff checked. But then when they do go back and check with it, oh, you didn't have a drug test. You didn't have your drug testing consortium set up. You never completed a drug test for any of your drivers. Oh, here's a slap on a wrist for it, which is a problem. And the thing is that, and you mentioned a point that the majority of carriers right now are not rated. You have, and see, here's one thing that I thought that the FMCSA was actually making a good step, because they were going to go into a binary system and say, hey, you know what? You're either going to be A or B, but then over the next year, we're going to make sure that every one of these motor carriers that we have in our database is going to fall under satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Because right now you have 4 different rating systems. You got unsatisfactory, satisfactory, conditional, and not rated. But what people don't understand, the crazy pushback that it's absolutely insane, is they think not rated is okay. No, it's not okay. You need to be either satisfactory or you need to not be operating, period. Because at the end of the day, would you get on an airplane if you walked in and you got to the you like analogies? I like analogies too. Would you get on an airplane if as soon as you walked on, you put your seatbelt on, they had a light over there, and on that light, on right above your head, once you got your seatbelt on now, you couldn't read the light until your seatbelt got clicked. You click the seatbelt and you look at the light and the light says, not rated. And you got 4 lights, not rated, conditional, unsatisfactory. Would you fly from where you're at across the country in a plane that's not rated?
No.
Or a company that's not rated? No. So why do people think it's okay to be not rated as a motor carrier?
The irony there is 15 years ago, a gentleman named by Hank Seaton, prominent transportation attorney, been around for 50 years, filed a lawsuit on behalf of several trade organizations, TNA, NASDAQ, a bunch of those, filed a lawsuit against the FMCSA basically on that red light, green light, right? It was settled out of court saying we're going to take care of this. That was 15 years ago.
That's crazy. 15 years ago. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's why, I try, let me tell you, just being an industry voice, or, a figure, or whatever you want to call it. I try to be as neutral as possible, man. Try to just to be neutral and really, because there's things that you got to take with both sides. But man, I'm tired of watching people suffer. I'm tired of the news that I saw in Texas was sickening. And every time you see it, it just becomes one of those things that just be like, oh, here goes another incident. There's just another incident. The FMCSA, the current administration said, hey, you know what? We're gonna go through with this ELP mandate. We're gonna put our foot down and we're gonna put things behind it. I just want to see the industry step back. And even if that means, Dale, if that means that we're not accepting any more motor carrier authorities for the next 45, 60, 90 days, then so be it. We don't need any more motor carriers at this point.
No one will suffer from that.
No one will suffer from that. We could stop allowing new motor carriers coming in right now for the next 3, 4, 5 months out. And it's not going to cause any major suffering from it, especially if give us the opportunity to clean up what we've got. But we got to figure out how we're going to get this cleaned up, because you're passionate. I'm passionate too. We can go on and on about this, because this is something that I just want to be able to get out. And you get on the highways, and I've been doing a lot of studies, and you'll be surprised at how many commercial motor vehicles have an operator behind the wheel that's not even qualified to be an operator behind the wheel. It's insane. And when I think about, my kids and my grandchild going in a car, in a Honda Civic down a highway by a truck that probably shouldn't be there, it just makes me, it pisses me off. Is what it does.
Yeah. And
I just wish that, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because you and I share the same energy when it comes down to that. What would be one thing, and just to kind of just shift up, just to give a little bit of advisement, because you've got an amazing voice. What's one thing every small carrier can do this week to lower their risk of being involved or victimized by fraud?
Well, subscribe to FreightValidate. I'd say one thing.
Yeah.
Because we do look for that for them. We've been called the unofficial quality assurance department of the FMCSA. Mm-hmm. We look for the things that they're not looking for. So I think that being aware of that. And the other thing is that I think that more owner-operators, and you're doing a tremendous job at this, is training. Just because you're a driver doesn't make you a business owner.
That's right.
Just because you're a business owner, an owner-operator doesn't make you a business owner, right? You have to know what's going on around there, protect yourself, your business, and everything else. So going back a little bit about that too, is after this accident happened in Terrell, the one that happened in Austin, the one in Dallas 5 years ago, what was the common theme there we heard from the FMCSA and the National Transportation Safety Board? All was about the same, right? Did you realize this guy's affiliated with this company and he's affiliated with this guy and he's affiliated? How about we do that before the accident happens?
I wish that would be with all of the technology that we have, that we've got technology that we could damn near go to Mars right now, but we don't have the technology to say, hey, red flag, they're associated. We need to pull them in for an audit immediately, or your MC is going to be suspended over the next 30 days. If you don't respond, we're
Yeah.
going to put you out of service. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that?
Especially,
We can't turn the light off. If you don't pay your insurance, Dale, in 30 days, I am shutting your MC off immediately. No problem. Easy. But
Right.
you mean to tell me that if we don't follow the rules, then we can skate by along that and not have any issues and you can't hit that same switch?
Yeah. And it's so simple. You don't even need a whole lot of technology. If you have an Excel spreadsheet of all the motor carriers, you can sort paragraph G and say, how many of these are at 3377 California Avenue? Well, that's
Right.
kind of weird. Let's send them all a letter.
Right.
How many of them have the same email address? Let's send them all a letter.
Yeah. Yeah. And put some teeth behind the letter. Say, hey, you know what? You
Yeah.
don't respond to this letter. If you don't schedule an audit or have one of our auditors come out, or we'll send a state representative out there within the next 30 days, then guess what? You can't operate.
Yeah.
We're going to shut
And
it
I
off.
think one thing the industry is starting to do very well at, and I think social media helped with this, is we're getting local and national news organizations involved in what's going on, because
Yeah.
all of this affects that guy in the Honda Civic on the street and his kids. It affects the person buying things at the store, because prices don't go just up because of inflation. They go up because of fraud and insurance and all those other kind of things. We need to get the industry, and the industry's involved. We need to get the people involved in it, saying, here's what's going on. And another reason I think that's important, in 2023, 6 U.S. senators and representatives wrote a letter to the OIG of Department of Transportation. His name was Eric Soskins at that time. In that letter said, we have 3,500 cases or schemes of fraudulent activity we want you to look into right away. We also encourage you to start a freight fraud task force. That was in May of 2023.
Mhm.
In August of 2023, they got a letter back that says, we haven't seen many problems with freight fraud. We've looked at 5 in the last 5 years and saw not a big problem. And they listed the household goods. Take us back to Federal Register 2013. We looked at some household goods issues. They were silent on setting up a freight fraud task force. The problem I have with that is, what have we done since 2023? Fraud's gone up. Fraud awareness has gone up. Where are those
Mhm.
senators now? Why do the people need to be involved in this? Because they can vote out the person that doesn't take care of this.
That's right.
If you're on the Transportation Infrastructure Board or you're on the Transportation Committee in the U.S. Senate, you need to be hearing to what your people are talking to you about. And if you can't do it, we'll find somebody that will and hire somebody else to work for the FMCSA that does a job for us.
That's right.
That's why I think it's important for us to reach out to everybody's a voter, right? So if you're a truck driver and you have family, talk to them about this kind of stuff. Get them involved in it. And here's the part that probably pisses me off the most is, of those 6 senators, one of them was our current vice president. So if they didn't listen to him as a senator, let's get somebody talking to him, say, you told them to do this back in 2023. You're vice
Do your
president
job.
now. Get them doing what you told them to do. Maybe
Mhm.
have some more pull. Another is the Senate Majority Leader, Mr. Thune out of South Dakota.
Mhm.
He was an author of that letter. Let's get these guys involved in it and talk to the new transportation secretary, who I think is doing a great job in trying to clean this thing up. He's got a mess he's walking into.
Yeah.
But let's get involved. You wrote a letter, Mr. Vice President, love you to death. You wrote a letter, years ago to get this thing fixed. Put your transportation secretary and your oncoming FMCSA chief in charge of this thing and look into those 35 cases. Look into the 80,000 that are probably that TSA's reported that have been reported to the National Consumer Database. Let's fix that program too. They say if you have a problem with fraud reported to the National Consumer Complaint Database, that form is useless. It's a black hole. That's the way you review stuff. Let's have a hotline.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that, one thing that, and we talked about, and one of the things that I'm excited about the playbook, working specifically with FreightValidate and our partnership together. I'm thinking I'm really excited about that, as we roll that out and it really brings synergy within it, because we have the same mission, the same vision, and we're really, really wanting to bring things together. And like you say, collaboration is so important. So really excited about what Playbook and FreightValidate are going to be doing as we go down the road. If somebody wants to be Platinum Verified or join FreightClub, What's the process like in order for them to do that? How do they get set up for that?
Okay, so the Platinum process, we're tweaking that, some of the issues on it now, because we want to have really easy to submit documents to our document imaging system. So we're working that out. We plan to have that rolled out by the end of this month. We're tweaking a lot of things in it. So I don't want to be premature with that. I want to make sure we cover every single base.
Sure.
The Freight Club, you can just go to freightclub.us and register. You'll get an email that says we received your application. Then you're going to have to go through facial recognition verification. Once that passes, you're going to go through, if you're a broker, carrier, or freight forwarder, Canadian carrier, whatever, if you have a DOT or MC number, you're going to go through FreightValidate, and we're going to make sure you're good to go. If you are a insurance company, a factoring company, anybody else, a stakeholder that wants to join, we want you to come in too because you have input. We want to get you involved. You'll have to go through a process where we're going to screen your Secretary of State's information, those kind of things. But we want to look to make sure that you're a valid person coming in there. We don't want somebody coming in and getting secrets and ruining it. Yeah. We've kind of tied that in a little bit about, and we talked about this, I think, last time you and I spoke about the Freight Fraud Task Force that we've kind of initiated with Jeff Dickinson, and I kind of came with the idea a couple months ago. That's going to be like really a training tool. A lot what you're doing with the carriers, we're going to piggyback off of that, and we're going to offer training to insurance companies. We're going to training to brokerage companies, and your curriculum. Like I told the guys over at the Freight Fraud Task Force, I'm an advisor for them. I'm not a board member. I'm not any of that. But we piggyback that information off of yours. We get a wider audience to owner operators and motor carriers and things like that. So again, that comes into that collaboration you guys spoke about. We're guys who don't just talk about it. We put that into action.
That's right. My final question, as we wrap up, and like I said, man, we could talk about this, till tomorrow night, nonstop. What's your personal mission behind all of this? What keeps you fired up about cleaning this up?
I don't want to see another single person die in a wreck somewhere. I don't want to see another poor owner operator go out of business because somebody screwed them out of $2,500 or $3,000 or a load of beef. I want to see an industry that was when my dad was owner operator back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, how a handshake like at the Broker Carrier Summit meant something. Yeah. Talking to people, teaching them how to be an owner operator, not just a driver who wants to own a business now. I think that's all important to me. People have said that I did this for the money. I certainly did not do this for the money. I did it to make not a buck, but a difference. I've spent a lot of my own personal money. I've never asked for an investment from anybody because I didn't want to have it skewed at all. So I think my goal is to stop fraud, get the FMCSA on board with how to do it. And if we can teach them how to do it, and we've been told, you and I have both been told by people at the FMCSA that we educate them from an industry standpoint. And we've got to keep doing that. We've got to keep educating. There's no one that I know of in the registration office at FMCSA that's driven a truck, loaded a trailer, brokered a load. A lot of them are, and there may be one, but I haven't met one yet, right? A lot of tech guys, a lot of maybe industry leaders in military or cops and law enforcement. Those are important, but there's got to be somebody in that higher level that's been a freight broker, that's driven a truck. We wouldn't have the main guy from FDA not know anything about food or drugs.
Right. Well, I hope that you and I and the efforts that we do collectively, I hope that this episode reaches the ears of the right person. And I hope our collaborations across the industry really brings change over the next couple of, the foreseeable future, because I'm tired. I'm tired of watching the news and seeing the carnage and seeing the families that are broken and seeing where we're going with it. It's heartbreaking when you see that. So, man, that one hit different. And big respect to you, Dale, for not just talking about fraud, but doing something about it. This industry's got cracks in the foundation. And one of the things that I can tell you is that if you're not verifying who you're working with, you're gambling with your MC. Freight fraud is real, it's growing, and it's targeting small carriers who don't have these systems in place. And if you want to protect your operation, check out FreightValidate and see what the Platinum Verified is all about once they roll it out. You don't get a second chance after getting burned, and that's one of the things that you always want to be mindful of. But Dale, man, what a conversation. I really appreciate you joining the conversation. I appreciate our partnership and collaboration as we build together. But how can folks reach out to you, reach out to your company if they wanted to get in contact with you?
Sure. Our email address is info@freightvalidate.com. Our website is www.freightvalidate.com. I'm all over LinkedIn, Dale Prax, or FreightValidate or FreightClub. They're all on LinkedIn. We also are, we work with the Freight Fraud Task Force, so you want to reach out to those folks. We try to be out there as much as we can. We're working with several news and organizations like that. But yeah, we try to be out there as much as we can. Sometimes maybe on LinkedIn too much, but I've just got so much to say about it and so much that we got to get fixed in this thing. And I'm going to say thanks to FreightWaves. We've been reached out and talking back and forth to the folks at FreightWaves, and they're really, that's a good voice. We need to be listening to these folks, radio, TV. Let's get everybody involved in this thing so we can fix it and let the bad guys know we're after them.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you again, Dale, and look forward to working together in the future. And for all the listeners on this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Send this to anybody who you know that would be impacted by it or could benefit from it. And until the next time on a long haul, be safe and most importantly, be profitable. Take care, everybody.